everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. Ancient Comet Impact. Mysterious carvings discovered at the ancient archaeological site of Göbekli Tepe seem to suggest something shocking happened 13,000 years ago. According to these carvings, ancient people witnessed a devastating comet impact long before the dawn of the first major civilizations. Göbekli Tepe is one of the oldest megalithic ruins in the world, estimated to be around 12,000 years old. Nobody knows who built the enormous site in Turkey, and experts can't even figure out how early humans, who had nothing but primitive stone tools to work with, carved such fantastic structures. Adding to the already baffling mystery of the site are the images of a comet impact. When scientists ran computer simulations of the solar system 13,000 years ago, they discovered a comet may have in fact hit the Earth. It could have even triggered the mini ice age that killed the woolly mammoths. The mini ice age is called the Younger Dryas period, and it lasted roughly 1,000 years. It was during this time that the Earth cooled and humans began practicing agriculture and husbandry. It was also when many of the biggest mammals, like the woolly mammoth, went extinct. Scientists have never confirmed what caused the small ice age, but a comet impact would make sense. It could be that the very people who built Göbekli Tepe saw the comet like a fireball crash through the atmosphere and hit the planet. Then, for the next 1,000 years, things were a lot colder. Number 9. The Druids. The Druids lived throughout Britain and France thousands of years ago, but the ancient history of these religious leaders who supposedly mediated relationships between humans and the gods is vague at best. According to Barry Cunliffe from the University of Oxford, Druids weren't a group of people, and they weren't a society either. They were instead specific people in early societies who taught wisdom and led religious activities. They shared what they knew about the natural world and the heavens with others. The issue for historians today is that all the knowledge we have comes from second-hand accounts that are hundreds of years old. The Druids themselves did not leave any surviving texts. Most of the documents that mention them come from the Romans. The earliest mention of a Druid is 2,400 years old, although they likely date back much further. One of the main sources of information on the Druids is none other than Julius Caesar. When he conquered Gaul in 58 BC and then invaded Britain 3 years later, Caesar came face to face with many Druids, and he described what they did. He claimed they engaged in sacred rituals. He also said they conducted public sacrifices and acted as judges in their communities. The Druids also prohibited anyone from writing down their doctrines. Instead, they forced members of their order to memorize all their beliefs and teachings. Number 8. The Hashishin Assassins. The hashishin are considered some of the most fearsome warriors that ever lived. Out of all the secret societies that have sprang up over the centuries, the hashishin were undoubtedly the deadliest. They first appeared in history in 1090 AD, when Hassan ibn Sabah took control over the mountain fortress of Alamaut in northern Persia. He soon began to amass a great force of highly skilled warriors, whom he could command with unwavering obedience. He would purchase young boys and take them from their families. Then he would turn them into skilled killers. While we know the order of assassins existed, we don't know how much damage they caused in ancient Persia and the surrounding area. The Society of Assassins was ruled by at least 8 Grand Masters between 1090 and 1256 AD. We also know that in a short span of just 2 years, the Mongols destroyed their castle and sent the few surviving hashishin fleeing through Iran and Syria. They were supposedly responsible for many political assassinations, and they were feared by everyone, from sultans to the Knights Templar. Number 7. The Infant Skull Helmets. Between 2014 and 2016, archaeologists excavated a series of burials in central Ecuador. The graves contained a gruesome mystery. The researchers uncovered 2 infants who were buried 2,100 years ago. The truly shocking part is that the infants were buried wearing helmets fashioned from the skulls of other kids. As far as we know, this is the only case in human history where children's skulls were repurposed as helmets, then worn by other kids. Scientists don't have a clue what was going on here. They don't know how the children met their end or why they were buried with such horrific headgear. While we don't have any answers to the mystery, we do have some facts. One of the children was 18 months old, and the other infant was only about 9 months old. The older child was wearing the modified cranium of someone 12 years old, and so was the younger infant. Sarah Jungst of the University of North Carolina has put forth a fascinating theory. She believes the unusual burials may have been an attempt to protect the souls of the children. It's obvious these kids died prematurely, and it must have been excruciating for the adults in their society. To give the children extra protection in the afterlife, they may have modified skulls to fit over their heads, hoping somehow they would travel to the next life with extra strength. Number 6. Timoto-Cuica people. Out of all the early people of the Americas, the Timoto-Cuica are some of the most mysterious. They were composed of 2 large tribes, the Timote and the Cuica, but they lived together in western Venezuela. They were close enough to the Colombian Andes that they were likely related to the mysterious Muisca people. We know very little about the indigenous groups of ancient South America. Scientists believe there was a population of about 1 million in the Timoto-Cuica territory, which spanned across the modern Venezuelan cities of Mérida, Trujillo, and Táchira. These people had sophisticated technology, and they were more developed than many of the nomadic tribes in South America. Also, they heavily focused their society on agriculture. They were so smart that they made irrigated platforms along hillsides to grow enough food to feed their booming population. They had permanent villages 1,500 years ago, as well as vast fields and stone houses. But there was one thing they did that a lot of cultures hadn't figured out yet. The Timoto-Cuica planned for the future. Scientists know they planned for the future because they used water storage tanks. They were well aware that the weather could turn against them at any moment, and so they planned for that eventuality by storing water. If there was a particularly dry season, the Timoto-Cuica would have had enough water in their tanks to survive. But unfortunately, we have no idea what happened to them. Around the 5th century AD, they simply vanished off the face of the earth, leaving no clues of where they went behind. And now for number 5. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to say a big thank you to Mama Witch 23 and Jive for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about amazing discoveries. Number 5. The Iliad and the Bible. The original Hebrew Bible, what many people know of as the Old Testament, was written between about 2200 and 900 BC. It was put into writing shortly after the events described in Homer's epic called the Iliad. What a lot of people don't know is that these 2 books share some shocking similarities. The Old Testament is as much a book about ancient history as it is about religion. It describes law and history, as well as wisdom and prophecies. The Old Testament gives a glimpse into the world events of over 4,000 years ago. It wasn't until the New Testament came along in the 1st century AD that we learned of Jesus Christ and his teachings to his disciples. The Iliad is a book that focuses on the last year of the Trojan War in roughly 750 BC. It's not overtly religious in nature, but it does deal with the pride of man. It also touches on the belligerence of the gods and the history of the Greeks. If anyone were to pick up a copy of the Bible and a copy of the Iliad, not having heard of either before, they might mistake both for scripture or both for fiction. The question becomes, what is considered scripture and who's allowed to make that judgment? The Bible and the Iliad are books filled with heroes. The Bible has Noah, David, and Moses, while the Iliad has Hector, Achilles, and Ajax. The Bible promotes the value of faith and obedience, while the Iliad promotes loyalty and honor. Both books contain laws regarding sinfulness, and they were each used as a unifying force in their time. The Bible unified Christians, and the Iliad unified the Greek civilization. Does the Iliad deserve reverence as scripture like the Bible? Some scholars say yes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 4. The Flowering Knights. In the ancient days of Korea, there were 3 kingdoms fighting for dominance over the peninsula, but in the end, only one of them was victorious, and that was the Silla Kingdom. They ruled over much of the Korean peninsula between the 1st century BC and the 10th century AD. During their rule, there was a mysterious and extraordinary group of warriors called the Flowering Knights, or the Hwarang. According to the few historical records available, the Hwarang warriors were created when the Silla Kingdom decided to make an organization of aristocratic fighters with good morals. Unlike the Knights Templar in Europe and the Middle East, who were poor and frequently dirty, the Flowering Knights were well manicured and fashionable. They wore cosmetics and fine clothes, and they even doused themselves in the finest fragrances when they went on adventures. Tales even say they met deep in the mountains to sing and dance together. It's unclear if the Flowering Knights ever did anything that affected the politics of Korea, and it's hard to know if they changed history in any way. We know they had to abide by their code, which consisted of 5 main rules: serve the king with loyalty, serve one's parents with loyalty, be loyal to one's friends, never retreat in battle, and never kill unless necessary. Over time, they diminished in importance, and eventually they vanished altogether, but the memory of the Hwarang lives on. Number 3. The strange Sanxingdui. The Sanxingdui site in China, dating back to the Bronze Age, is a mystery of the ancient world. The site was once inhabited by the culture of the same name, the Sanxingdui. Evidence of their existence was first found in 1928 when a farmer accidentally came across a stash of jade relics. Scientific excavations were conducted in 1934, and the presence of a major culture was finally confirmed in 1986. Since then, Sanxingdui has been one of the most important sites in Chinese archaeology. This ancient culture, which existed from between roughly 2700 and 1000 BC, was highly advanced. They crafted beautiful relics out of gold, jade, and ivory. They made incredible headway in the art of metallurgy, and they even organized their city using skilled urban planning. Sadly, most of what we know is superficial. We know what their buildings look like and that they crafted items out of many different materials, but we don't know what beliefs they held and what kinds of politics they practiced. We have very little understanding of what the Sanxingdui were like as a people. We do have some clues though. Archaeologists have uncovered mysterious gold foil ornaments in the shapes of birds and golden masks. Some of the ornaments even look like curious humanoid beings. It seems like they had a respect for the natural world, and they definitely participated in cultic activities. They also appear to have worshipped strange, alien-like beings. Number 2. The Lost City of Zibalanda. 4,000 years ago, the ancient Hittite people wrote of a grand cultic center called Zibalanda, located somewhere in modern Turkey. It was a holy city where the Hittite people traveled to worship their storm god. However, the ancient site has never been discovered. Archaeologists don't know for sure if it ever existed or if it's just been lost to history. In 2022, a team of archaeologists from the University of Pisa were researching the Anatolian plateau when they came across a mysterious construction. They found a circular structure and evidence of additional buildings in a seemingly barren field. Nobody knew there was something there before, but now it seems like it may have once been an important site to the Hittites. It hasn't been confirmed yet as the storm god city of Zibalanda, but it's definitely a possibility. Following the discovery, Professor D'Agostino from the University of Pisa explained in a press release that the city of Zibalanda was dedicated to the god Ziblantlil, lord of storms and fertility. He was often depicted in Hittite artwork as a lion. Tablets and other ancient texts have been found describing festivals that took place at Zibalanda, so it was clearly an important place to the old inhabitants of Anatolia. Because of the location of the newly discovered structure, researchers speculate this could be the lost religious capital they've been searching for. They believe that the site in the Anatolian plateau could have once been the home of the Hittite storm god. Number 1. Egyptian Mummy Mystery. In the 1850s, British philanthropist Sir Charles Nicholson traveled to Egypt and brought home the mummified body of someone who died 3,000 years earlier in a wooden box. Then he donated it to the University of Sydney in Australia about a decade later. The mummy proved to be a fascinating mystery. The inscription on the coffin identified the owner as a woman named Marua. The iconography allowed historians to date the coffin and the woman's death, to about 1000 BC. The big mystery is that the woman wasn't only wrapped in bandages like a typical mummy, she was encased in a mud shell that scientists at Macquarie University called a carapace. The mummy was first scanned in 1999, but technology wasn't great back then. Scientists took another look more recently and were shocked when they found the bizarre mud shell surrounding the mummy. They dated the fabric she was wrapped in to about 1200 BC, and surprisingly, the mummy is older than the sarcophagus she was brought to Britain in. But how could that possibly be? Scientists believe it all comes down to 19th century coffin dealers. The woman's body was likely taken from her original coffin, then put into a more interesting sarcophagus to make it look more authentic, perhaps so it could be sold for a higher price. Thanks for watching! Which of these shocking ancient mysteries did you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!